Hey everyone, Noah Zerby here, welcome back. This is one of a series of videos looking at topics in foreign policy. In this video, we're going to examine the challenges posed by two-level games in international negotiation. That concept was formally articulated by Robert Putnam in his classic article, Diplomacy and Domestic Politics, The Logic of Two-Level Games, first published in 1987. So what exactly is a two-level game? Let's imagine a hypothetical negotiation taking place between the United States and Japan over a new trade agreement. This would be a classic example of bilateral negotiations between two states. The way we normally think of this taking place is the U.S. Trade Representative might meet with their Japanese counterpart, each coming with a set of goals for the negotiation. The United States would approach the negotiations with a range of possible outcomes that could include their most favored outcome, all the way to their least favored but still acceptable outcome. And Japan would approach the negotiations with a similar range of possible outcomes, ranging from their most favored outcome to their least favored but still acceptable outcome. The two would spend some time engaging in trade-offs, with each side giving a little, and we would expect that they would likely reach agreement somewhere where the range of their preferred positions overlap. Putnam refers to this as the agreement set. But this hypothetical model is rooted in a unitary actor model of the state. That is, it assumes that there's a single set of interests, often defined as the national interest, that motivate each state's behavior. Successful conclusion of an agreement depends simply on finding the areas of overlap between the two countries' national interests. Putnam's insight rests in the recognition that the two countries are negotiating between one another at the international level, are at the same time simultaneously engaging in negotiations at the domestic level. That is to say, a country's negotiating position at the international level is often the result of domestic political contests between various actors. These domestic political contests might involve the national legislature, various bureaucratic interests, business and labor interests, or others. But each attempts to shape the public policy in a way that's favorable to their own interests. And importantly, these actors may also have a role in approving whatever agreement is reached at the international level. Congress may have to ratify an agreement, bureaucratic interests may need to implement it, and labor and capital may affect positions by deeming certain concessions at the international level unacceptable, thus pressuring the state to adopt different positions than it might otherwise be willing to consider. And remember that this is happening at the same time on the Japanese side. Their domestic interests are operating to shape and influence policy outcomes in negotiations, and there too the outcome of international negotiations needs to be ratified by domestic actors. Because of this, Putnam observes that the range of agreement sets possible at the international level may be limited by the interests of domestic actors. That is, domestic actors may not approve the full set of agreements possible at the international level. And so we must also consider what we might think of as a ratification set, or what Putnam calls a win set. The hypothetical win set pictured here may operate within a more narrow range for both the US and the Japanese position, and indeed if this were the case, negotiations would likely fail because each side would recognize that while they could reach agreement in principle, no agreement they would reach could be ratified by domestic audiences and get approved domestically. In other words, only when there's overlap between the agreement set and the win set, or the ratification set, would it be possible to successfully conclude an international agreement. And importantly, this model works not just with bilateral negotiations, but with multilateral negotiations as well. The number of parties, and thus the complexity of the negotiations, increases with additional actors, but the general framework and the importance for finding overlap between the domestic win sets and the international agreement sets remains. But exactly how much impact do the two-level games have on negotiations? Actually, a great deal. In his article, Putnam quotes an interview with Robert Strauss, who served as the U.S. Special Trade Representative, basically the lead U.S. negotiator, during the Tokyo rounds of negotiations of the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, the precursor to the World Trade Organization. And in that interview, Putnam quotes Strauss as observing that, "During my tenure as Special Trade Representative, I spent as much time negotiating with domestic constituents, both industry and labor, and members of the U.S. Congress, as I did negotiating with our foreign trading partners." So, what lessons should we take away from Putnam's concept of two-level games? There's a couple of lessons. First, and perhaps most obviously, the idea of two-level games explicitly connects the domestic and the international levels of analysis and helps us to break down the black box of foreign policy decision-making. Second, there are some tactical insights that can be derived from understanding the problem of two-level games. Smart negotiators may use knowledge of their own win set and pressure of domestic interests to limit the concessions they offer to the other side, enabling them to take a stronger stand than they might otherwise be able to take. But this strategy comes with risks, and assuming that kind of static position may cause the other side to simply walk away from negotiations. Similarly, understanding another state's win set may help a negotiator understand where they can push for greater concessions if they know that their opponent has a large win set, or where they have to exercise more caution or be willing to make more concessions if they know their opponent has a narrow win set. And uncertainty over the size of the win sets, that is, uncertainty about what precisely may be ratified or approved at the domestic level, can provide an opportunity for more aggressive negotiating postures, but can also lead to failure after agreement has been reached. In U.S. politics, this insight might be helpful for understanding why the U.S. has signed the Law of the Sea Convention and the Paris Climate Accords and other international agreements, but has failed to ratify them. The agreement set, that is, what we could successfully negotiate with other countries, did not overlap with the win set, that is, what we could get ratified domestically, and thus the treaties were never approved by the Senate. As a result, the idea of two-level games can help us understand why international negotiations so frequently fail. It may be that the outcomes preferred by domestic constituencies are simply not attainable in negotiations with other countries. Or it may be that the outcomes preferred by other countries may not be acceptable to domestic constituencies. But the challenge of having to find outcomes that satisfy both international partners and domestic interests can be a barrier to successfully concluding an international agreement. So that concludes our very brief introduction to two-level games. I hope you found it informative, and thanks for watching, everyone.